Welcome to Homebuilt Review. This is the 1 o'clock version today. We're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the RV-8. I think I mistakenly said 40 a few minutes ago, but 30 years ago, this gentleman here flew a unique new airplane into Oshkosh. We'd already seen the RV-4, but all of a sudden we saw an RV-4 on steroids, and it was the RV-8 showed up in 1995. So my name's Joe Waltz. I'm on the Homebuilt Aircraft Council and also Chapter 302 down in Conroe, Texas. I just happen to have an RV-8 as well, so it makes this kind of a fun interview. So we're going to start off with introductions. Most of you should know Mr. Dick VanGrunsven sitting in the middle here, the founder of Van's Aircraft, and he's still there churning. The company's been around for 7 years now. There's over 11,000 Van's aircraft flying around the world. Of those, let me see, we just got the updated number from Ryan. I think he showed me, was that 1,600? 1,695, I think it was. 35. Let's call it 1,600 of the RV-8s out there flying. That's quite a few airplanes. So Ryan Johnson, the lead engineer at Van's Aircraft, played a pivotal role in designing the RV-8. RV-10s, I'm sorry, you were at the end. Yeah. That's right, you were working as an intern there, so we're going to rely on Van to tell us about the history of the aircraft as it started. On right here with the blue shirt, Danny King, flying beautiful Dow. You may have seen this before because Danny has had this airplane here for what now, 28 years? 23 out of 25 years that Danny's had this aircraft here. So he's going to be the old guy for our discussion. On the end, Scott Price has the newest RV of the two. Scott, you finished yours last year, so it's still a very viable design. If you want a tandem aircraft, which is great for formation, it's great for the aerobatics that an RV can do. It's not a competitive plane in the ultimate class, but it definitely is. It gives you thrills. You can have a whole lot of fun with it. So with that, I'm going to let the board talk to you here, and Dick VanGrunsven is going to tell us a little bit about the history of. He already had 2 successful airplanes out there, actually 3. We had RV-3, RV-4, and the RV-6 were already flying and selling well. Why did we come up with an RV-8, and tell us what your design goals were?
Okay, well, I have to back up just a bit to frame things properly. My first original design was really the RV-3, which I finished in 1971, first flew it here in 1972. I built that airplane. It was kind of an evolutionary process, but to suit myself, to have the qualities that I wanted in a single-seat airplane. Most home builds back then were single-seat, built from plans, etc. My hope was that even though I tailored it for my own interest, that other people would also like that airplane, what it had to offer, and be interested in building it. Fortunately, they were. We offered initially plans and some specialized parts that within a couple of years evolved into, say, complete kits, not complete to the degree they now are, but in that era, kits were almost unheard of. They're just built from plans and raw material. The point I'm trying to make here is that initially I built an airplane for myself and other people like it. As time went on, then we tailored my design to what people other than myself wanted. I still tended to lean in the direction of my preference. They wanted, of course, a 2-seat airplane, even before I finished the single-seat RV-3. And then, of course, do you make 2 seats tandem or side by side? I asked a lot of people. I didn't really tabulate all the responses, but the ones I heard were tandem. My preference.
Sure.
The point there being the RV-3 was a great all-around high performance and aerobatic airplane. I put a lot of emphasis on aerobatics at the time because I love doing that. And I figured the RV-4 would, the tandem configuration could be made a little smaller, a little more faster, more efficient than a side-by-side. So we did the RV-4. Was not a stretched RV-3. It was a new airplane. Looks a lot alike. Definitely fingerprints were there. It turned out better than I had hoped. So it still had almost all of the RV-3 attributes, yet we did have that second seat. And of course, immediately, 2 seats wasn't good enough. We needed side by side. I was really worried about losing a lot of the handling performance, particularly aerobatics, that by going to a fat airplane. And worked hard on that. Recognized the fact that that's just what preference was, somewhat driven by the passenger that the airplane was likely to carry. So developed the RV-6 in about 1986, whatever. I don't need to get the exact timeline here. The side-by-side immediately became more popular than anything. Fortunately, it was almost as fast as the sleek tandem RV-4. Aerobatics was still very good, so it was an overwhelming success, not only because the passenger didn't want to sit in back, but because most pilots had learned to fly in side-by-side airplanes. That's what they knew, that's what they liked. So over the period of the next, I don't know, several years, the RV-6 sales just dwarfed what our RV-4 was, to the point that we had considered just dropping the RV-4, the tandem configuration, because maybe 10 or 15% of the sales were there. I still had a soft spot in my heart for the tandem. And part of the reason for the preference of the RV-6 was there was a little more, at least more perceived space in the cabin, baggage, etc. And it was those qualities that people were looking for. My thought was, if I can achieve some of this in a tandem configuration, just kind of enlarging the airplane a bit. The RV-4 is pretty minimalist because I wanted to keep the size and everything down to get that ultimate performance from it. I thought, well, we'll kind of start over and retain kind of the same wing and tail as we had on the RV-4, but added more space in the cockpit, provision for a higher horsepower engine, more fuel, more of everything. Obviously, more is always better, maybe. But so we did the RV-8 prototype, and it took us less than a year, I think, to make that airplane. Showed up here in 1995, and there was definitely interest in it. And it never did achieve sales numbers like the RV-6, but definitely a good enough response that we started offering that. 30 years later, we're still selling them. So I know that's a longer history than you wanted, but
no, not at all. So no, we love to hear the history of the company and also what's the genesis of these thoughts. So to provide a little bit more baggage space, a little bit more cabin space,
fuel,
but maintain the tandem.
And bigger cockpit, better over the nose visibility. But the other thing that was happening, we were upgrading the kits as we were going forward. And this was the first airplane in which we used CNC punched skins. We didn't have matched hole, but just the skins itself, so that maybe on your airplane when you built it, you had all the holes in the skin. At least the skins were a good drill guide.
Yeah,
it didn't all go together like an erector set, but it was a significant step forward, and it was part of the process then that evolved from one model to another to the point that we have the kit now. You throw it up in the air and you throw a bunch of rivets up and then it comes down assembled. Not quite that easy, but we've made tremendous progress. But the 8, in addition to the final product, the performance, the cockpit ambiance, and what have you, the kit improvement was there that helped make the airplane more attractive.
So if we had an RV-4 here, you would be able to tell the difference externally, but there's lots of internal differences too. Is the wing the same airfoil, just a different length?
The wing is the same airfoil. Some of the internal components are different. The spar was redesigned to accommodate a fuselage wing center section rather than in the RV-4, the wing spars placed together at the center. Various things that I'd have to have a diagram here that you could really appreciate.
Right, but it's a completely different internal structure on the wings, but externally we're pretty much the same.
Somewhat different internal, just whatever made sense to upgrade or not.
Yeah, Ryan?
Yeah, the engineer at the time was Andy Hanna, and he was instrumental in turning the company around, or not around, but in the right direction at that time. We got our first punch press. The spar is actually copied off of a Spitfire or a ME-109. They both attach the same way with that bolt pattern that's really concentrated. And he also, the stresses are really low in that spar, so he set the precedent that we used even to the 15 we had here earlier, where you're not going to see fatigue in that spar because of the low stresses within it.
Super, that's cool. I do know, though, that there are a lot of parts in mine, and probably still, they had RV-6 numbers on them, so like in the empennage. So you do a good job of repurposing something. If it worked on one airplane, it might work on the next. By the way, Vans has discontinued selling kits of those 3s, 4s, and 6s. However, Ryan assured me earlier that they're definitely still going to support them. If you have an RV-4, you can still get parts to repair it. But those weren't match drilled, or they were match drilled parts. They weren't pre-punched. So trying to make a skin fit is a little more difficult.
When we first did the RV-8, I assumed that the RV-4 sales would just disappear. They didn't. It was still a much lower volume of sales, but there are people that still preferred it because of the appearance, a little lighter, a little less expensive, or whatever. But over the years, as we evolved the matched hole kits, a lot of people say, I really love the 4. Why don't you make that matched hole? Why don't you just put holes in that for me? Some people don't realize that the holes go in to the material before it becomes a part. So in other words, you have to redesign it from the get-go. And the volume of sales just didn't justify that. One reason why, it'd be nice, oh yeah, we'll keep that even if we only sell 5 a year. It just doesn't pencil out. We have to stay in business. So, but anyway, it's mainly a matter of really understanding what the matched hole is, how that's achieved, how it is processed through raw material and through final part.
Before we get into how to build one of these, which these two guys can address very well, those early ones, you played around with some different engine choices. Pretty much it's like Lycoming now, either angular or parallel valve. Can you tell us about that? I think you went through a Franklin engine at one point.
At one point, we experimented with a 6-cylinder Franklin. I'm trying to remember the exact model number, but it was rated at, I think, 220 horsepower, just a bit more than the 200 horse Lycoming, which was the upper level. Only reason for that was at the time the Franklin engine production was moved to Poland, and they were offering or promising a pretty lucrative price on the engine. So we tried it, but the engine installation was heavier and more difficult, and our shop guys nicknamed it the Frankenstein. So it never worked well enough to be offered, but that was really the only alternate engine that we had considered for it.
Do you know of any others that people have put on them? There's one guy with a radial RV-8.
Somebody put a radial. I'm trying to remember. There's a couple of them had Mazda rotaries.
Mazdas.
But so many of the engines that show some degree of promise don't really come out. And even if it's an absolutely equivalent, it just muddies the water.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Stick with your
one
light.
reason you don't offer options is because unless it increases sales volume, it just makes it more difficult to handle options rather
Definitely.
than having a one standard that. And the engines on the RV-8 are anywhere from 150 Lycoming up through 200. So there's some choices there, but it's the same family, the same cowling, the same basically mount, and it makes it efficient for us rather than trying to serve some limited market.
Right. Okay, well, let's get into building them. Before we do, how many of you out there are actually building an RV-8 right now? Quite a few. So it's still in the marketplace. This side too. That's a lot more than I thought. How many of you actually have a flying RV-8? So you're almost tied with the people still building it. How about considering? And today we're going to change your mind. Okay, there we go. Good. Very capable airplane. So Danny, put on your sales hat. Tell us why you decided to build an RV-8 and then the process you went through back in those days.
Well, I was looking to I built a shop thinking someday I was going to build an airplane. And instead of just put a boat in it, I put air on the walls and big compressor. So anyhow, then all of a sudden I came to see Van's aircraft every time I came to Oshkosh, which was very often. And I kept walking through, and I loved the 4, but I just thought it was a little too small for me. I'm a big guy. And then I looked at the 6, but I already had a Yankee, and I said, "This almost the same airframe with a little engine, so I want something else." And then I missed seeing it in '96 because my Yankee broke down on the way here. I went back home, and the next year came in. I walked up, and I saw the 8, and I went, "Oh no, that's it. That's the airplane." And I tried to talk myself out of it because I knew I'd get obsessed. I'd spend money, and I would spend all my time. But I left Oshkosh with just the RV-8 flyer and the cassette tape of the RV story. And I tried to get rid of the fever. It would not go away. I called a friend who built the 4. He was, I flew with T-38s with him back in Del Rio. And I tried to get him to talk me out of it, so I didn't tell him what I called. And then I just threw in, "Hey, do you still have your 4? Hoping he'd say something like, "Well, I got rid of it. I'm bored with it." He went into a love fest. It's the only airplane he enjoyed flying. And then he said, "Well, I kind of miss the building, so I'm thinking of building an 8. And I went, "Jim, you're supposed to talk me out of building an 8 because I'm trying to get the fever out." And he started going nuts. "Yo, you got to do it." And he said, "Tell you what, come down here to Conroe, take my 4, I will let it do all the talking." So I went down there and got into the airplane, a little nervous because it was the only airplane he enjoyed flying. And he was at a handheld, and I had his headset, and I took off. It didn't put up a fight taking off, climbed out, went out over Lake Conroe, and in about 5 minutes, I felt like I'd been flying that airplane for 100 hours. Everything was perfect, so comfortable and so responsive. And so I called him up and said, "What's the entry speed for a loop?" And I was doing aerobatics in the first 15 minutes. Everything was so perfect. And I went back worried about the landing because I don't want to break his airplane. I set it down. It didn't even put up a fight. So I went around. The only problem I had with the airplane was getting it to flat speed on downwind. So I had to pull it to idle, pull the nose into a climb, and when it got slow, I click. And so I said, "Okay, the last landing is going to be when the tailboat comes down and everything's going to get squirrely." And it went straight, it settled, and it rolled straight. I keyed him, I said, "Jim, where are you hiding the nose gear on this airplane?" This is the most docile tilter I've ever flown. Well, I texted him with the RV grin from ear to ear. And there was a guy who had an RV-3 with the exact same 150 wood prop. He said, "Go fly my RV-3. Keep it at 80 knots on climb out." So I said, "Okay." And I took off. And first time I looked in, I was already doing 100. So I pulled it up to climb at 80, and it was a rocket ship. And it flew, even if it's possible, it even flew nicer than the 4. So I came around, taxied it, and I was hooked. And I've been hooked now. See, I bought my RV-8 kit in September of '97. I drilled the first sizing hole in the horizontal stabilizer, and I flew it to Oshkosh in 2000. So not counting the time I was waiting on parts, it took me 2 years and 7 months, including the paint job, which I did. Don't look too close. And it was a life-changing thing. And I sold everything else I had because that's all I needed. And I fly it nonstop to Texas from here. It's just an incredible airplane.
So you said you were how many other RV-8s were flying when you got yours flying?
Well, the best I checked everybody that reported they had flown either in Flying or EAA or in Vans magazine. I was the 20th RV-8 to fly, as best I could calculate. 20th. And when I came to Oshkosh in 2000, there were 3 airplanes on the field. There was the Vans original prototype. There was one from Canada that was a little bit rough, and then mine. And I had it over here in the experimental parking, and it was mobbed every day. Yeah. And I even got home and I saw a picture that Van had come out there. I wasn't there when he did, but he came out. And paint job was stolen from Colonel John D. Lander's big, beautiful Dodge Mustang. It was my favorite Mustang. My wife was in the tail cone doing the riveting, bucking the rivets for the turtle deck. And when she climbed out of there, she said, "We're going to do a military paint scheme." And I said, "Dear, I've got sort of a red, white, blue thing in my head. We're going to do a military paint." Well, I built a radio control model of Big Beautiful Dawn. I brought it out and hung it on the garage frame rail right next to the fuselage when I was doing the canopy and the wheel pants and the cowling. And for 6 months, I stared at that model and stared at the 8, and I said, "I think that'll work." About halfway through checkerboarding a double compound curved cowling, I asked myself, "What the heck were you thinking?" But I persevered, and I'm glad I did, because everybody loves it, because it's a favorite paint scheme on Mustangs, as far as I can tell. And other people have copied it, and a lot of airplanes painted up like Mustangs, and various Mustang paint schemes started showing up. And we all kind of realized that the RV-8 sort of has a World War II fighter plane look to it. And I saw that when I had the great big poster on the wall of the airplane from the side. And I took a pencil and I penciled on a scoop underneath, and I sized the canopy down a little bit. P-51. So that's how it happened.
And it flies just like one, only better actually. It's lighter on the controls. The only difference is the number on the speedometer. So
I finally got a bucket list, and I got the 5 for the back seat of a P-51 Mustang. And the guy said, "Have fun, don't hit anything solid." And so I rolled it left and right, and I looped it once. And honestly, the ailerons on the 8 and the ailerons on the P-51 are almost the same as far as stick-in airplane response. Pitch is much heavier on the P-51 than this. Control harmony of the 8 is much better. But anyhow, I couldn't believe it. I went like this, and the airplane did the same thing as the 8 here does. And so I painted it just right.
Vance thinks it might be faster, I think. Let's move over to Scott. So Danny, kit number 434, probably you said the 8th one flying. Let's move up. I think, Scott, you said your kit 3286?
That's correct.
So they've sold a lot of tail kits in the meantime.
And that was 10 years ago.
Over 3,000. Oh my gosh, 3,000 of them. So it took you a little longer than it did Danny. 10 years. Tell us your design or your choice, and then the build. How did that work?
Yeah, I got introduced to vans indirectly. I went to Air Force pilot training in 1987, and there was this young man in my class. His name was Mark VanGrunsven. And everybody's like, "You know who that is?" And I'm like, "No." I had no idea. And it was Dick's nephew. And so we started talking about, he had been flying an RV-4, and this guy has great hands, amazing hands. And so that kind of was a little bit of an inspiration, did my career, got into the airline business, and in 2006 I came out with an RV-10. Or at least that's when I started my RV-10, and I was going to build it for the family, except my son was already starting high school. And everybody, including the folks at Vans, like, "You're not going to finish before they're gone. Your kids are going to be gone. You don't need a 4-place airplane." And a bunch of them, including my chapter president at the time, which is the home chapter for Vans, 105, he said, "You want to fly an RV-8. You're an old Air Force instructor, and it's going to be fun, and yes, you can take it and go places." And I said, "No, I don't. I want a 10. Long story short, I sold the 10 kit, ended up buying an RV-4, and flew that for almost 6 years. Then I decided, after taking my lovely wife for 38 years, on a number of cross countries that it was just a little too small in the back for her. She's a trooper and she would go anywhere with me, but I said, nope, I got to build something bigger. And I went for a flight in an RV-8, and just a wonderful gentleman by the name of Joe Blank. He said, I think she needs the spousal approval flight, and that was a no-no back then. So he took her up in the little yellow bird. She came back with this giant grin on her face and goes, we're building one of those. And that was 10 years ago. And it's been a long process. You know, life gets in the way, work gets in the way. I have some side businesses, and, but really, it was a solid 5 years of work, and this is what I've got.
And you've got a beautiful example too. We're hoping to see some results from you putting it up for judging. So those will come out on Saturday. So let's. Eventually, we're going to add. I think, Dick, you need to go somewhere, don't you? You've got an appointment. Do you have any parting thoughts for us before we let you loose?
Yeah, given the opportunity, I would just talk on and on. But
and we love hearing everything
quite
you got
often,
to say.
thank you. People often have asked me, which is your favorite model? And I have to answer it with a question, which is your favorite child? So I can put it in perspective. I love them all. If I could only have one, it would be an RV-8. And that is because it go fast, it will haul 2 people, it's aerobatic, it's just a beautiful airplane to fly. So for you made a good choice based on my personal preferences. And I say the RV-4 eventually, after not too many years, became in a way obsolete to be replaced, but we haven't really come up with anything yet that would really replace the 8. So it's not our biggest seller for various reasons, but it has been sustained over the years. We've still got a lot of them under construction, as witnessed by the serial number you mentioned. A lot of them don't get finished even in 10 years. But that's what it is. Life gets in the way. But hopefully it'll be around for a lot of years. People will keep enjoying it. And those of you that are considering it, you won't regret it.
You know, there's another statistic I wish we had. I don't think we do, but that is how many RV-8s are still owned by the original builder. I bet that's a much higher percentage than, say, 6s and 7s.
It could be. I don't know. There's all kinds of reasons for building, owning, selling, etc. And I think there are some that they sell them and they turn around and build another one because they know they can do better than the first one. So anyway, like I say, it's a great airplane, and it's hard to believe it's been 30 years already, but life moves on.
Well, the company's been around for 50 and quite successful. You just announced, started selling wing kits for the RV-15, the newest iteration. And so now we've got all the way from the available now to buy all the way from the 8 to the 15. What's nice is they all fit a different niche as far as your needs. And if you analyze, I'm going to say, if you analyze your design goals, not your design goals, but your flying goals, you're going to find an airplane in that group somewhere that's going to fit your particular needs in an airplane. Van, let's let you get going. We're still going to keep going with this, but we need to let him go. Just hand the mic to.
Okay, just thanks a lot for coming. Thanks for your interest in the airplane, and we hope you make the choice to get involved.
And
you won't regret it.
Give Van a big round of applause. Thank you. I'm going to move seats so people don't have to look at my back. So another interesting thing, since we're talking builders, we've got a fellow here in the crowd, Phil Pushy, sitting right here. He's got kit number 8. Bought it in you bought it in 95, correct? 95, right? When it debuted. So kit number 8. And Phil, when did you get it flying? Last October. So you don't have to build it in 2 years. You don't have to. It doesn't matter if it takes 4 years. I bet you're still having a lot of fun with it. Okay, so super. It doesn't matter how fast you build the darn thing. They are easy to build.